They sent her as a joke, the daughter nobody wanted. The Arab millionaire was supposed to laugh, but something happened at that meeting, something unexpected. Where are you watching this story from? Subscribe to the channel and leave a like, because what happened next will surprise you. The summer sun bathed the Newport shoreline, transforming the Atlantic into a mirror of liquid gold, while inside Blackwood Manor, the atmosphere had crystallized like ancient amber. The moment the seal of the gilded envelope broke between the trembling hands of her stepmother, Mrs. Blackwood, Evelyn's fate was sealed with calculated cruelty. Mr. Suleiman Al-Riyad requests a bride from Newport's most prestigious family. Mrs. Blackwood's voice resonated through the drawing room with its cream silk draperies, her eyes scrutinizing her 3 biological daughters with pride before settling on Evelyn, lurking in the shadow of a carved column. The perfect sisters waited eagerly, their muslin dresses rippling like waves around their graceful silhouettes. Audrey, the eldest, adjusted her golden curls and smiled confidently. Cordelia and Phoebe exchanged complicit glances, certain that one of them would be chosen. It was at that precise moment that Mrs. Blackwood pronounced the words that would upend everything. "Evelyn will be our family's envoy." An astonishing silence fell over the room. Evelyn, 23, the forgotten daughter relegated to the back apartments of the manor house, felt her heart stop in her chest. The scar above her left eyebrow, remnant of a childhood accident, suddenly seemed to burn. "Let him receive what he deserves for his arrogance," whispered the stepmother with a venomous smile, while the other women stifled mocking laughter behind their hand-painted fans. "This pretentious Arab asks for Newport's most beautiful flower? Let's send him the thorn." Evelyn remained motionless, her fragmented reflection in the Venetian mirror revealing a young woman with amber eyes, dark chestnut hair, and this scar that she was constantly reminded disfigured her. Her ink-stained fingers silently testified to the hours she spent studying ancient Arabic calligraphy, a passion considered inappropriate that she had to conceal. "You'll leave in 6 weeks," declared Mrs. Blackwood, folding the letter. "Prepare yourself to become the damaged goods destined for the modern castle of America's most powerful Arab magnate." In her austere chamber that night, Evelyn contemplated the moon through her narrow window. The scents from the gardens below, jasmine, rose, and lavender, rose to her like a distant promise. A solitary tear slid down her cheek. Sometimes what we consider our greatest punishment becomes the path to our most authentic liberation, she thought, caressing the worn cover of a book on Arabic calligraphy hidden beneath her mattress. The 6 weeks of preparations passed in a whirlwind of fabrics, perfumes, and bitter remarks. Each dress tried on, each forced etiquette lesson was accompanied by the inevitable comment, "Even dressed in silk, a caterpillar remains a caterpillar." Yet, in the silence of her sleepless nights, Evelyn continued to trace the elegant curves of Arabic calligraphy. Her fingers danced across the paper, forming characters that resembled birds in flight. The aroma of ink mingled with that of the incense she secretly burned, amber and musk, perfumes of the Middle East that had always mysteriously attracted her. "Why this obsession with a culture that isn't yours?" her father had once asked before his disappearance. She had never known how to answer. These characters, these scents, these stories resonated within her like a distant call, a familiar melody whose lyrics she had forgotten. The day of departure arrived with the brutality of a blade. A black car with tinted windows waited in front of the manor, its impassive driver holding the door open. The Blackwood family had gathered for a farewell that resembled a banishment more than a celebration. "Don't forget," Mrs. Blackwood murmured, embracing her coldly for appearances, "you represent our family. If you ever manage not to get sent back immediately, don't forget the family that has given you so much." The words were clear. Send money, lots of money. It was in that car that the first small turning point occurred. Seated beside her, a middle-aged woman wrapped in a sapphire hijab observed her with piercing eyes. "I am Yasmin," she announced with an accented voice. "I will be your companion during the journey and upon your arrival." Silence settled between them as the car moved away from Newport. It wasn't until several hours later, as the sun began to set, that Yasmin spoke again. "You can read Arabic," she said. It wasn't a question. Evelyn started. "How—" "Your fingers," replied Yasmin, indicating her hands. They bear the marks of someone who practices calligraphy. And I glimpsed your notebook. Instead of the expected condemnation, Evelyn perceived a gleam of interest in the older woman's eyes. Suleiman al-Riyad is a 37-year-old man, Yasmin began in a low voice, as if sharing a precious secret. His wealth is incalculable thanks to his business dealings with the Middle East, but he has never married, despite the constant pressure from his powerful Arab family. Evelyn listened, fascinated despite herself. He refuses all the perfect heiresses from Dubai and Riyadh, continued Yasmin, her enigmatic eyes fixed on the horizon. He seeks something that no one can define. And they're sending me, Evelyn murmured bitterly. What a cruel joke. Perhaps, replied Yasmin with a mysterious smile. Or perhaps fate has a sense of humor we don't yet understand. After 3 days of travel, the car turned onto a winding road climbing toward the Berkshire Hills of Massachusetts. Evelyn watched the centuries-old oak trees pass by, their silvery foliage dancing under the sea breeze. That's when she saw it, rising atop a hill like a vision from another world. Al-Riyad Castle, a contemporary fortress of Carrara marble that gleamed like a pearl under the New England sun. Gilded domes reminiscent of ancestral mosques crowned certain wings, while hanging gardens created cascades of greenery and flowers along the immaculate walls. It's magnificent, isn't it? Yasmin completed. Suleiman had this residence built by fusing traditional Islamic architecture with contemporary design. Every detail was personally supervised by him. As the car approached, Evelyn distinguished the mosaic fountains that sparkled in the sun, terraces adorned with Moroccan lanterns, palm trees gently swaying in the wind within vast glass conservatories. The main gates, made of carved cedar wood inlaid with mother-of-pearl, opened before them. A row of servants in elegant attire greeted them with respectful salutations, but Suleiman wasn't there. "The master is on a business trip to Marrakesh," explained the majordomo, an elegant man named Ibrahim. "He begs you to accept his apologies and welcomes you to his home. You will be staying in the East Wing, Miss Evelyn." The East Wing proved to be a suite of luxurious apartments, curiously isolated from the rest of the house. Rooms with ceilings painted with complex geometric patterns, furniture inlaid with mother-of-pearl and ivory, Persian carpets with shimmering colors. Everything breathed luxury and refinement. And yet, Evelyn felt like a prisoner. "How long will he be absent?" she asked Yasmin, who was supervising her installation. "As long as necessary," replied the companion simply. Days transformed into a week, then 2. Each morning, Evelyn awoke to the sound of fountains and the scent of Persian roses and Arabian jasmine from the interior courtyards. Each evening, she fell asleep with the same question. Why had they brought her here if only to abandon her this way? Solitude threatened to consume her until she discovered, by chance, a door hidden behind a tapestry. This door led to the magnate's private library, a vast circular space where thousands of books and manuscripts rose to the domed ceiling painted with golden constellations. Here, among the dusty shelves, she found treasures, manuscripts in Arabic on Islamic astronomy, medieval poetry, ancient mathematics, traditional medicine, volumes that no one seemed to have consulted for years. It was in this library that Evelyn began to feel, for the first time in her life, truly at home. On the 10th day, as midnight struck somewhere in the silent mansion, Evelyn was immersed in a particularly complex manuscript on sacred geometry. The silver incense burner near her diffused a scent of oud that curled in bluish wisps around the cedar shelves. Absorbed by the diagrams and equations, she didn't immediately notice the presence in the room. "Ibn al-Haytham," said a deep voice, profound as the desert. "You're reading his theories on optics." Evelyn started, nearly dropping the precious manuscript. In the doorway stood a tall man with broad shoulders, dressed in a simple black suit that contrasted with his sun-golden skin. His eyes, a brown so deep they appeared black, observed her with a troubling intensity. Suleiman al-Riyad. He was different from the photos she might have seen in economic magazines. More austere, more imposing. A neatly trimmed beard framed a face with chiseled features, and a slight scar crossed his right eyebrow, a strange reflection of her own. "I'm sorry," she stammered, rising hastily. "I didn't mean to—" He raised a hand to interrupt her and advanced into the room. His steps were silent on the Persian carpet. "Don't apologize for intellectual curiosity," he said, sitting on a silk cushion a few meters from her. "It's a rare and precious quality." Silence settled between them, populated only by the crackling of incense and the distant murmur of fountains. Evelyn remained frozen, unable to determine if he was angry or merely curious. "You can read Arabic," he finally observed. "Yes," she admitted. "I taught myself." "Why?" The question was simple, direct, yet profoundly complex. Why indeed would a young American woman be interested in a language and culture her own family despised? "I don't know exactly," she replied honestly. "These characters speak to me, as if they contained secrets I should know." A flash of interest crossed Suleiman's gaze. He leaned slightly forward. "Show me." Evelyn hesitated, then took up the manuscript again. Her fingers trembled slightly as she began translating complex passages about how light travels through geometric shapes to create sacred patterns. Suleiman listened without interrupting her, his gaze moving from the manuscript to her face, as if searching for something beyond the words. "You read the stars through the words of my ancestors," he commented finally, his voice resonating between the cedar shelves. Few people understand that these texts are not just scientific treatises, but bridges between the visible and the invisible. For the first time in her life, Evelyn felt her intelligence recognized as something beautiful, not shameful. An inexplicable warmth spread through her chest. Suleiman rose in a fluid movement. "It's late. We'll have other opportunities to discuss." He paused at the door, his profile silhouetted against the dim light. "You are welcome in this library, Evelyn. Consider it yours." The door closed gently behind him, leaving Evelyn alone with the lingering scent of sandalwood he wore and the strange sensation that something important had just begun. The following days took on a new dimension. Suleiman appeared regularly in the library, sometimes for a few minutes, sometimes for hours at a time. Their conversations, initially hesitant, became more fluid, deeper. They spoke of Islamic mathematics, Sufi poetry, Arab influence on European architecture, never of their situation, never of this arranged marriage that hung over them like an undeclared storm cloud. One morning, Evelyn was awakened by unusual agitation. Male voices echoed through the corridors, orders given in Arabic with authority. "The family council has arrived," announced Yasmin, entering her room with a breakfast tray. "Suleiman's uncles and cousins. They come each quarter to discuss family affairs." She set down the tray and added in a low voice, "They've come earlier than expected this time, because of you." Evelyn felt her stomach knot. "What do they want?" "To see you, to evaluate you." Yasmin adjusted her hijab with precise gestures. "You must prepare yourself. Wear the blue dress, the one with silver embroidery." 3 hours later, Evelyn stood in the great hall, a majestic space with walls adorned with monumental calligraphy. Facing her, seated in a semicircle on chairs of precious wood, were 7 men, the council of the Al-Riyad family. Suleiman occupied a central position, his face impassive. The oldest, a man with graying temples and a gaze sharp as a Damascus blade, stared at her without disguising his contempt. "So this is her," he said in Arabic, thinking she wouldn't understand. "The insult the Blackwoods have sent us. A girl with a scar, without beauty or significant dowry." Evelyn kept her back straight, her chin raised. She felt Suleiman's gaze on her but didn't dare meet it. "Uncle Farid," Suleiman replied calmly in English, "Miss Blackwood understands Arabic." An icy silence fell over the assembly. Uncle Farid narrowed his eyes. "Then she'll hear directly what I think," he resumed in English. "This alliance is unacceptable. Our family deserves better than a girl rejected by her own house. We demand that you send her back immediately." The tension in the room made the air dense and suffocating. Evelyn felt her breath catch in her throat. There it was, over before it had even begun. She would be sent back, humiliated, forced to return to those who had exiled her. It was then that Suleiman stood, tall and imposing in his impeccable suit. "Miss Blackwood is my guest," he declared in a voice that tolerated no contradiction. "And I do not tolerate disrespect to my guests under my roof." He turned to Evelyn and inclined his head slightly. "Please excuse us, we have family matters to discuss. Ibrahim will accompany you for a walk in the gardens." Politely but firmly dismissed, Evelyn left the room with the feeling that her fate was being decided without her behind those closed doors. In the gardens, fragrant with lavender and lemon trees, she walked like a troubled soul, ignoring the majordomo's explanations about rare plant species imported from around the world. Then Ibrahim received a call on his phone. His usually impassive face showed concern. "Miss," he said after hanging up, "Mr. Suleiman requires your immediate presence. An urgent situation needs your attention." When Evelyn returned to the hall, the atmosphere had radically changed. Faces were tense, documents spread across the great marble table, and assistants were coming and going with urgent files. "A financial crisis," Suleiman quickly explained, inviting her to sit. "Our European investments are threatened by a hostile maneuver. We risk losing millions within hours." She looked bewildered at the graphs and projections scrolling across the wall screens. Why had they called her? "What do you expect from me?" she asked directly. Uncle Farid snickered. "Nothing, obviously. It's Suleiman who insists you witness this debacle." But Evelyn wasn't listening anymore. Her attention had been caught by the names of the companies involved, spice and Mediterranean product import companies. Something awakened in her memory. "Wait," she said suddenly, "these trade routes, they follow the ancient routes of Arab merchants from the 13th century. A surprised silence settled over the room. "I read manuscripts about the trading system used by merchants from Fez and Cordoba," she continued, approaching the screens. "They had developed a distribution network that circumvented Venetian taxes by using alternative routes through Sicily and Marseille." She pointed to the map. "If you reorganize your supply chains following these historic routes, you could not only avoid the current crisis, but reduce your costs by nearly 30%. The financial administrator, a man with thin glasses, looked at her skeptically. "That's absurd. Modern regulations have nothing to do with medieval systems." "The principles remain the same," Evelyn insisted, suddenly animated by a confidence she didn't know she possessed. "History repeats itself, particularly in matters of trade. Let me show you." Without waiting for authorization, she went to the central computer and began drawing a new organizational scheme, explaining each step with a precision that surprised everyone present, including herself. When she had finished, the room was silent. Suleiman looked at her with an indecipherable expression. Admiration? Surprise? Doubt? "Let's try," he finally said. "We have nothing to lose." Uncle Farid began to protest, but Suleiman raised his hand, silencing him. "My decision is made." The hours that followed were a frantic whirlwind of calls, reorganizations, renegotiated contracts. Evelyn stayed on the sidelines, watching the machine set in motion based on her suggestions. Terror began to invade her. What if she was wrong? What if she precipitated the ruin of the Al Riyadh Empire? Night had fallen when the first results arrived. The financial administrator, his initial skepticism replaced by undisguised astonishment, announced, "The losses are contained. If the projections are correct, we'll be in positive territory by morning." Uncle Farid remained silent, his gaze oscillating between Evelyn and the screens displaying the ascending curves. Suleiman approached Evelyn. For the first time, she saw a genuine smile brighten his austere face. "How did you know?" he asked softly. She shrugged, suddenly aware of all the eyes fixed on her. "Books," she replied simply. "Your ancestors had already solved this problem centuries ago." 3 weeks after the financial incident, the castle vibrated with new energy. Evelyn's method had not only saved the threatened investments, but had also generated substantial profits by establishing new trade routes with Morocco and Tunisia. That morning, Suleiman had invited her to an official board meeting of his group. In the conference room with its bay windows offering a panoramic view of the Berkshire Hills, she stood at his side as he addressed the assembly of men in suits and women in tailored business attire. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "I have the honor of officially presenting Miss Evelyn Blackwood, who will henceforth be a consultant in historical strategies for our group." The polite applause barely masked the curiosity and skepticism in some gazes. Who was this unknown woman who suddenly had the ear of the powerful Suleiman al-Riyadh? "This 23-year-old woman," continued Suleiman, "possesses an understanding of ancient economic models that has already saved us from a major crisis. Her innovative approach based on ancestral wisdom will guide our future expansions." Evelyn felt her cheeks flush. Never in her life had she been presented with such respect, such consideration for her intelligence. But with this victory came a cost she hadn't anticipated. The very next day after this announcement, the first letter arrived, a venomous missive from her stepmother. "We hear you're giving yourself airs of importance with the Al-Riyadh family," Mrs. Blackwood wrote. "Remember your place and your loyalty. We expect compensation for having placed you in this advantageous position." Other letters followed, each more demanding than the last. Her family, who had sent her as a mockery, now claimed their share of the unexpected success. Simultaneously, resistance within the castle itself grew. The Arab elite surrounding Suleiman viewed the growing influence of this foreigner with disapproval. Whispers spread like a subtle poison. "She bewitches him," they said. "She is not worthy of the Al-Riyadh lineage." One evening, as she worked late in the library on a new essential oils trade project, Suleiman joined her. He seemed tired, his shoulders slightly stooped under the weight of invisible responsibilities. Without a word, he sat across from her and began preparing mint tea in golden glasses, a ritual they had taken to sharing. "My uncles presented 3 candidates to me today," he said abruptly, his eyes fixed on the amber liquid he poured with precision. "Heiresses from great Saudi and Emirati families, beautiful, educated, wealthy, perfectly suited to become the wife of an Al-Riyadh." Evelyn's heart constricted painfully. Of course, how could she have forgotten? She was just a consultant, an intellectual curiosity, not a genuine contender. "I understand," she said, striving to maintain a neutral tone. "It's normal for you to seek an appropriate alliance." Suleiman raised his eyes, his intense gaze plunging into hers. "I refused them, all 3. The silence that followed was charged with unspoken words. "Why?" she finally dared to ask. He set down his glass gently, the crystal tinkling softly against the copper tray. "For years I have received perfect candidates," he said slowly. "Women whose beauty was flawless, whose lineage was impeccable, whose dowry would have enriched even our considerable fortune. And yet I never married. Do you know why, Evelyn?" She shook her head, unable to speak. "Because all these women saw only my fortune and my power, never the man who reads Rumi under the moon, and who fears dishonoring the memory of his ancestors." He paused, his fingers absently touching the scar on his own eyebrow, a troubling reflection of her own. They wanted the title of Al-Riyadh's wife, not the reality of the imperfect man behind the name. Evelyn felt something break and rebuild simultaneously in her chest. For the first time she dared an audacious gesture. She extended her hand across the table and gently brushed his fingers with hers. "The imperfect man is infinitely more interesting than the perfect name," she murmured. Their gazes met, and in that moment, suspended between 2 breaths, an invisible bridge formed between their respective solitudes. The month of August brought the celebration of Eid, and for the first time since her arrival, Evelyn appeared publicly alongside Suleiman. The castle teemed with vibrant colors, crimson and turquoise Persian rugs, spices perfuming the air with cardamom and saffron, the sound of Arabic ouds and derboukas resonating in the gardens, illuminated by thousands of lanterns. She wore a sapphire blue silk dress, her hair partially veiled by a diaphanous scarf constellated with silver threads. At her side, Suleiman, magnificent in his white gold-embroidered djellaba, welcomed his guests, the Arab-American elite, dignitaries, business leaders. The gazes that settled on her were a mixture of curiosity, surprise, and, for some, barely veiled hostility. Who was this scarred woman who stood with such assurance beside the magnate? "Your Evelyn is surprising," commented a Saudi princess to Suleiman, her musky perfume enveloping her words like a veil. "Not at all what we expected." "She exceeds all expectations indeed," he replied with an enigmatic smile. The evening progressed, and Evelyn navigated between conversations in English and Arabic with an ease that surprised even Suleiman. She discussed Islamic architecture with a professor from Harvard, debated fluctuations in the spice market with Moroccan importers, exchanged anecdotes about calligraphy with a Tunisian artist. It was then that an incident came to disrupt the perfectly orchestrated evening. A little girl in rags, about 8 years old, had slipped among the guests. Visibly from the nearby village, she was desperately seeking someone to speak with, her large dark eyes filled with urgency. The guards were preparing to discreetly expel her when she spotted Evelyn and rushed toward her, clinging to her dress. "Please, ma'am," she pleaded in dialectal Arabic. "My mother is sick, very sick. We were told that the great Suleiman could help, but no one will listen to us." An embarrassed silence fell over the group of guests nearby. The intrusion of misery into this opulent celebration created a palpable discomfort. Without hesitation, Evelyn knelt on the marble floor, ignoring the shocked murmurs, to place herself at the child's level. "What's your name?" she asked gently. "Layla," replied the little girl, surprised to be heard. "And your mother, what's happening to her?" As the child explained the situation, pneumonia aggravated by lack of medical care, the inability to pay for medicine, Evelyn felt Suleiman's gaze on her. She didn't know if he disapproved of this interruption to his prestigious evening. When she stood up, she met his gaze and was surprised to read, not anger, but a sort of restrained wonder. Without a word, he approached and addressed the child directly. "Your mother will receive the best care from this evening, Layla. Go tell your father that a car will come in an hour." Then, turning to Evelyn, he added in a low voice, "We should do more." This was the beginning of a project that would transform the region. The next morning, instead of participating in the planned festivities, Evelyn and Suleiman were gathered in his office with doctors and administrators. "I want to establish a permanent clinic for community residents," announced Suleiman, "following the principles of ancient Islamic medicine but integrating modern technologies, free for those who cannot pay." The news spread like wildfire through the Arab neighborhoods of the Berkshires and beyond. For the first time, people began to see Evelyn not as the mysterious foreigner from the castle, but as a woman with a compassionate heart who had influenced the powerful Al-Riyadh toward generosity. But this turning point created a new conflict. Arab magnates and certain family members openly accused Suleiman of wasting resources on people without lineage. "Charity is one thing," declared Uncle Farid during a tumultuous meeting. "But you're transforming our commercial heritage into a social work. It's unacceptable." "Our heritage," Suleiman calmly replied, "also includes responsibility toward those less fortunate. It's written in the texts you claim to venerate." The conflict intensified, and Evelyn found herself at the center of a storm she hadn't created, but was determined to face. Autumn arrived, gilding the castle's Persian gardens and bringing with it a new set of challenges. The clinic established by Suleiman and Evelyn was experiencing success that exceeded all expectations, attracting patients from across the region. Simultaneously, their trade method, inspired by ancient roots, was generating record profits. But the price of this success manifested in the form of increasingly virulent attacks. That morning, a new letter from her family arrived, more threatening than the previous ones. "We have learned of your growing influence with the Al-Riyadhs," Mrs. Blackwood wrote. "If you do not immediately send us substantial compensation, we will reveal to the entire Arab-American elite your true nature, an ungrateful, manipulative girl who abandoned her own family. We have evidence of behaviors that would discredit you forever." Evelyn let the letter fall from her trembling hands. Hot tears rose to her eyes, blurring her vision. Sitting on her windowsill, she gazed unseeingly at the oak trees dancing in the breeze. What evidence could they possibly have? Fabrications, certainly. But doubt crept into her like a slow poison. This is how Suleiman found her, reddened eyes, the crumpled letter at her feet. Without a word, he picked it up and read it. His face hardened, a vein pulsing slightly at his temple. "They have no power over you," he said softly, sitting beside her. "Not here. Not with me." "You don't understand," murmured Evelyn. "They can destroy everything. Your reputation, the respect you've earned. I am nothing, but you—" "Stop," he interrupted, his voice suddenly firmer. He took her hands in his, a gesture of intimacy he had never allowed himself before. "When I look at you, I see the light of intelligence in your eyes, the kindness that softens every expression, the courage that raises your chin even when the world tries to bow you down." He delicately traced the scar on her eyebrow. "This mark that your family considers a disfigurement, I see as the sign of a soul that has faced adversity and emerged stronger. You are the most beautiful woman I have ever known, Evelyn, worthy of the gardens of paradise described in the Quran." The words imprinted on her like a calligraphy of fire. erasing years of doubt and denigration. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe she could be seen, truly seen, for what she was, beyond appearances. "We will resolve this situation," continued Suleiman, rising, a new determination in his gaze. "But first, there is something I must show you." He led her through corridors she had never traversed, to a remote wing of the castle. There, he unlocked a door inlaid with mother-of-pearl, and ushered her into what appeared to be his personal office. Unlike the official workspace where he received associates and dignitaries, this room was more intimate, more revealing of the man behind the name. Books of Sufi poetry were piled on a low table. An ancient astrolabe stood near the window, and on the walls, framed calligraphy coexisted with black and white photographs. Suleiman went to a safe hidden behind a painting and extracted a leather-bound dossier. "Since you mentioned your mother's name during our conversations about your childhood, something troubled me," he said, opening the dossier. "I had discreet research conducted." He handed her a series of documents yellowed by time, certificates, letters, old photographs. "Your mother, Elizabeth Reed, didn't simply leave as you were led to believe," he gently explained. "She was on a mission in Syria, where she met an Arab scholar named Karim Al-Fassi. They fell in love and—" Evelyn scanned the documents, her heart racing. Love letters in English and Arabic, a photo of a young woman with amber eyes identical to hers, embraced by a man with a gentle gaze and a well-groomed beard. "Are you saying—" Her voice broke, unable to formulate the question that would change everything. Suleiman nodded gravely. "According to these documents, you are not the daughter of the man who rejected you, but of your mother and Karim Al-Fassi, a descendant of a lineage of Arab sages. This explains your natural connection to our culture, your ease with our language." Evelyn's world shifted on its axis. The pieces of a puzzle she had never known how to assemble suddenly fell into place. Her inexplicable attraction to Arabic calligraphy, her intuitive understanding of ancestral texts, this permanent sensation of being a stranger in her own family. "The family that sent you here with disdain hid this truth for reasons we still don't know, perhaps to steal lands inherited from your Arab origins," continued Suleiman. "But one thing is certain, you were never the thorn they claimed. You are the rose they feared to see bloom." Silent tears now flowed freely down Evelyn's cheeks. Not tears of pain, but of liberation, of recognition, of belonging finally found. Suleiman knelt before her, taking her hands in his. "Now that you know your true heritage, what do you want to do?" She breathed deeply, feeling a new strength awaken within her. "I want the truth, the whole truth." And then, her eyes met Suleiman's, and a silent understanding passed between them. "And then I want to build a future that honors both my heritages." The weeks following this revelation were a whirlwind of emotions and discoveries. Suleiman had sent his best investigators to Boston, where important archives had been located. What they brought back exceeded Evelyn's wildest expectations. Documents not only proved her filiation with Karim Al-Fassi, but also revealed that her mother hadn't left voluntarily. She had been forced to leave America after attempting to reclaim her daughter, threatened by the Blackwood family who coveted the substantial inheritance attached to the child. "Your mother tried to find you for years," Suleiman gently explained as they reviewed the reports together. "But she fell ill in Syria, where she was searching for proof of your heritage. She died 5 years ago, still looking for you." The pain that traversed Evelyn was physical, a white-hot blade piercing her chest. So many lost years, so much love of which she had been deprived. "And my father, Karim?" she asked, her voice trembling. Suleiman's face darkened. "We have no certainty. The last trace of him dates to 2011, at the beginning of the Syrian conflict. He was protecting precious manuscripts at the Damascus Museum. After that," the unspoken hung between them like a storm cloud. War had swallowed so many lives, so many stories. "He could still be alive," she said, clinging to this tenuous hope. "We continue to search," promised Suleiman. "But meanwhile, we have enough evidence to confront the Blackwoods and recover what legitimately belongs to you." This confrontation took the form of an official letter, drafted by Suleiman's lawyers, detailing the evidence of fraud perpetrated by the Blackwood family and demanding the immediate restitution of misappropriated assets. The threat of legal proceedings and public exposure was clear. The response was not long in coming. A complete capitulation, accompanied by pathetic pleas to avoid scandal. The family that had rejected and humiliated her for years now prostrated itself, terrified of the consequences of its actions. One evening, as the sun set over the Berkshires, tinting the sky purple and gold, Evelyn stood on the main terrace, contemplating the horizon. 9 months had passed since her arrival as damaged goods, and everything had changed, including herself. She sensed Suleiman's presence before hearing him. He stood silently beside her, their shoulders almost touching. "What will you do now?" he asked, his deep voice carrying a note of concern he no longer tried to disguise. "You could reclaim your inheritance, leave, start a new life anywhere in the world." She turned her face toward him, studying his now familiar features. The severe line of his jaw softened by his well-groomed beard, his deep eyes that hid so many sorrows and dreams, the scar on his eyebrow that mirrored hers like a message from destiny. "Why would I leave," she murmured, "when I have finally found a home?" Something untangled in Suleiman's expression, a tension he had carried for so long it seemed part of him. "This castle can be cold," he said softly. "The responsibilities that come with my name are a burden I would impose on no one through obligation or gratitude." Evelyn shook her head, a smile brightening her face. "It's not the castle that has become my home, Suleiman. It's you." In the silence that followed, charged with unexpressed emotions, she made the decision that would define her future. "I must make a difficult choice," she said firmly. "I must completely sever ties with the family that mistreated me. It's painful, but necessary to move forward." Suleiman nodded gravely. "Sometimes our greatest act of courage is to let go of what hurts us, even if it is part of our history. And sometimes," she added, daring to take his hand, "our greatest act of faith is to welcome what calls to us, even if it terrifies us." Their fingers intertwined, sealing a silent promise as the last ray of sunlight disappeared at the horizon, announcing the end of one chapter and the dawn of another. Winter in the Berkshires brought an unusual gentleness, as if the season itself was in harmony with the new balance Evelyn had found. In the months following her decision to cut ties with her toxic past, she devoted herself to honoring her two heritages and creating something meaningful. Her first initiative was to establish a school for girls following the model of ancient madrasas, where the scent of Arabic calligraphy ink mingled with the laughter of learning. The institution, located in a renovated building in the heart of a nearby town, welcomed young girls of all origins, American, Arab, Syrian refugees, offering them an education that married modern sciences with ancient wisdom. "You give life to your parents' dreams," Yasmin told her one day, having chosen to assist her in this project. "Your mother was an educator, your father a guardian of knowledge. You are the bridge they hoped to build." These words touched Evelyn to the core of her being. Each day spent teaching young girls the importance of their minds rather than their appearance was a tribute to the woman she herself had never had the chance to know. In parallel, she created medicinal gardens inspired by Arab Andalusian traditions, importing rare plants from Morocco and Egypt. These spaces, open to the public, quickly became places of healing and peace for residents of the region. Her third achievement, perhaps the most controversial, was the establishment of a modern system of zakat, obligatory almsgiving in Islam, adapted to the American context. In collaboration with Suleiman, she set up a fund that redistributed a portion of the Al Riyadh Empire's profits to widows, orphans, and families in need, without distinction of religion or origin. Each of these projects encountered resistance: reluctant American bureaucracy, skeptical Muslim traditionalists, concerned commercial elites. Each victory cost nights of prayer and reflection, legal battles, delicate compromises. But Evelyn was no longer alone in these struggles. Suleiman stood by her side, his unwavering support transforming their relationship into a deep and multi-dimensional partnership. One February morning, as the first signs of spring began to appear in the castle's conservatories, Evelyn was surprised to see Yasmin enter her office with an unusually solemn expression. "It's time I tell you the truth," announced the companion, sitting across from her. "What truth?" asked Evelyn, suddenly concerned. Yasmin smoothed the folds of her midnight blue hijab, taking time to choose her words. "I am not simply a companion. I have always been, a secret advisor to Suleiman. Faced with Evelyn's stunned expression, she continued, "For years, he has charged me with evaluating all potential wives his family presents to him. I observe them, test them, determine if they seek the man or only the name." She served mint tea with orange blossom in small decorated glasses. "He asked me to find someone with a true roux, an authentic soul, not with a houri's face. Your family thought they were sending you as an insult, but in truth they delivered to him exactly what he was seeking." Evelyn stared at Yasmin, astonished by this revelation. "You mean that from the beginning?" "No," Yasmin gently interrupted. "I had no idea who you truly were when I came to fetch you, but I began to observe, to see beyond what others saw. I saw how you secretly fed the stray cats of Newport before our departure. I noticed that you read complex texts when you thought no one was watching. I saw your soul, Evelyn, and I reported what I saw." The companion placed a wrinkled hand on hers. "Suleiman made his decision long before we discovered your true heritage. He chose you for who you are, not for your lineage or your appearance." This conversation still echoed in Evelyn's mind when, later that same day, Suleiman invited her for a walk in the castle's winter garden, a vast glass conservatory where exotic plants flourished despite the snow outside. The air was charged with the scent of citrus and the promise of the coming spring. "I have a proposal for you," he said, as they stopped near a blue mosaic fountain. "Not as heir to the Alriads, but as a man who has found in your presence the peace he has always sought." He took from his pocket a small box of cedar wood, inlaid with mother-of-pearl and ivory. Inside rested not a ring, as one might expect, but an ancient key. "This is the key to the family mausoleum in Fez, where my ancestors have rested for generations," he explained. "In our tradition, offering it means welcoming someone not only into one's present life, but into one's eternal heritage." His dark eyes sought hers, vulnerable and determined at once. "Evelyn Reed Alfassi, would you accept becoming my wife, not by arrangement or convenience, but by mutual choice and recognition of souls?" The world seemed to stop turning, time suspended like a raindrop on the edge of a leaf. In that perfect moment, Evelyn knew with absolute clarity that all the suffering, all the rejection, all the doubt had led her exactly where she needed to be. "Yes," she replied simply, her amber eyes bright with contained tears. "Honoring who we are and who we can become together." Spring unfurled its colors across the Berkshires, transforming the castle's gardens into a symphony of roses, jasmine, and flowering fruit trees. Preparations for the wedding, planned for early summer, intensified, but Evelyn kept her focus on her projects, refusing to be overwhelmed by ceremonial details. The girls' school thrived, now welcoming more than 100 students. The unique program she had developed was attracting attention from educators worldwide, a curriculum that taught not only traditional academic subjects, but also self-esteem, critical thinking, and civic engagement. "The girls learn to see their worth beyond mirrors," she explained during a conference in Boston. "We show them they can be both heirs to ancient traditions and creators of new futures." That morning, as she supervised the planting of new medicinal herbs in the community gardens, a young girl approached her timidly. Evelyn recognized Layla, the child who had interrupted the Eid celebration to ask for help for her sick mother. "Miss Evelyn," said the little one, offering her a carefully crafted drawing, "my mother is healed thanks to you and Mr. Suleiman. I wanted to thank you." The drawing depicted a dark-haired woman with a small mark on her eyebrow, surrounded by children and plants. Above, in clumsy but touching Arabic calligraphy, was written, "The Lady of Two Hearts." Moved, Evelyn knelt to embrace the child. "Thank you, Layla. This is the most beautiful gift I've ever received. Is it true that you're going to marry Mr. Suleiman?" asked the child, her large black eyes bright with curiosity. "Everyone in the village is talking about it." "Yes, it's true," confirmed Evelyn with a smile. "Then you'll be a princess like in the stories." Evelyn laughed softly. "Not exactly a princess, but I hope to be someone who can help even more people like your mother." Returning to the castle that evening, the drawing preciously preserved in her notebook, Evelyn was surprised to find Suleiman waiting for her with an unusually anxious expression. "What is it?" she asked immediately. "News," he replied, inviting her to sit in the private salon. "About your father, Karim Alfassi." Her heart began to beat faster. "You've found him?" Not exactly, but we've found his work. Suleiman gently opened a wooden case resting on the coffee table. These manuscripts were rescued from Damascus and preserved in Jordan for years. They bear his signature, his handwriting. It's his work on the connections between Islamic mathematics and sacred architecture. With trembling hands, Evelyn touched the yellowed pages, covered with elegant and precise writing that she instinctively recognized as familiar, though she had never seen it before. It was as if her own fingers remembered these curves, this particular way of forming Arabic characters. "There's more," Suleiman added softly. "We found this between the pages of the main manuscript." He handed her an envelope sealed with wax, yellowed by time, on which was written in Arabic and English, "For my daughter when she returns to her heritage." Evelyn's hands trembled so much she could barely break the seal. Suleiman discreetly excused himself, leaving her the necessary privacy for this moment. In the letter, dated 2010, Karim Al-Fassi wrote to a daughter he hadn't seen grow up, but whom he had never stopped loving. He recounted his love for Elizabeth, their fleeting happiness, the pain of forced separation, and his unshakable hope that destiny would one day reunite what had been unjustly divided. "My dear daughter," he concluded, "whatever your name today, whatever life you have lived, know that you carry within you two precious heritages, the passion and freedom of your American mother, the wisdom and faith of your Arab ancestors. This duality is not a division but a richness. It is a bridge between worlds, a promise of understanding in a time of ignorance. If you ever read these words, do not seek to choose between your heritages, but unite them in a new creation, as water and earth together form the clay that gives birth to the most beautiful pottery." Tears flowed freely down Evelyn's cheeks as she read and reread these words. A message traversing time and space, a blessing from a father she had never known, but whose heritage she carried in her blood and in her soul. When Suleiman returned, he found her transformed. Her tears dried, her gaze bright with a new determination. "I know now what I must do," she said, standing, "how to fully honor my two heritages and create something that transcends divisions." May was drawing to a close, and with it the final preparations for the wedding that would take place in 3 weeks. Contrary to tradition, Suleiman and Evelyn had decided to gather every aspect of the ceremony, fusing American customs and Arab rituals into a unique celebration that reflected their shared journey. But before this new chapter could begin, Evelyn had to face one final test. Despite the official break with the Blackwood family, part of her remained haunted by unanswered questions, by the need to understand why and how they could have hidden her true identity from her for so long. "I must confront them one last time," she announced to Suleiman one evening, as they were finalizing the guest list. "Not to forgive, but to completely free myself." Although reluctant, Suleiman respected her decision. "You will not go alone," he insisted, however. "I will be with you." The return to Blackwood Manor was like entering a distorted dream. The places were identical, yet profoundly changed, or perhaps it was she who now saw with different eyes. The once intimidating garden now seemed small and neglected. The once imposing drawing rooms appeared cramped and pretentious. Mrs. Blackwood received them in the main salon, visibly uncomfortable in the face of Suleiman's imposing presence. Her daughters were absent, hastily married to local notables after the smothered scandal of the family fraud. "What more do you want?" the stepmother asked tersely, her face marked more by bitterness than by years. "We have respected the agreement. All assets have been restored." Evelyn remained standing, refusing the offered seat as if to signify she would not stay long. "I haven't come for material possessions," she said calmly. "I've come to understand why. Why hide my origins from me? Why this constant cruelty?" A dry laugh escaped Mrs. Blackwood's pinched lips. "The truth? You really want to hear it? I demand it." The older woman rose and went to a secretaire from which she extracted a gold medallion that she almost threw onto the table. "Your father, my husband, adored your mother. She was his great love, not I. I was the choice of reason after her presumed death." Her face twisted with resentment. "When we discovered she was alive and married to that Arab, that she had a child, we seized the opportunity. Your father wanted to get you back at any cost." She took a few steps, her heels clicking on the marble as if to punctuate each bitter revelation. "When he died in that accident, I inherited you as an unwanted burden, but also the lands that were rightfully yours. So yes, I chose to keep you, not out of affection but out of greed. And every day I hated seeing in your features the ghost of that woman he had never stopped loving. The final puzzle piece fell into place. Evelyn opened the medallion to discover the photo of her mother, the same woman from the images discovered by Suleiman. And when that letter from Suleiman al-Riyad arrived, you saw the perfect opportunity to get rid of me, she concluded softly. A poetic revenge, isn't it? Replied Mrs. Blackwood with a venomous smile. Sending the daughter of an Arab to an Arab as damaged goods. What delicious irony! Suleiman, who had remained silent until then, stepped forward, his presence suddenly intimidating despite his apparent calm. The irony, madam, he said in a voice where contained anger simmered, is that your act of cruelty led Evelyn exactly where she was destined to be. You thought to humiliate her, you elevated her. You thought to punish her, you liberated her. He turned to Evelyn and offered his arm. We have nothing more to do here. Before leaving the room, Evelyn turned one last time. I don't thank you for the years of suffering, but I recognize that without your final act of malice, I might never have discovered my true identity. I leave you to your bitterness, madam. It will be your only faithful companion. In the car that took them back toward the Berkshires, Evelyn remained silent, the medallion clutched in her hand. Suleiman respected this silence until they reached the hills overlooking the valley. Do you regret going? He finally asked. She shook her head, a serene smile illuminating her face. No. I needed this confrontation to understand that my life was never defined by their cruelty, but by my resilience, that my identity wasn't in what they hid from me, but in what I always knew deep inside. She opened the window, letting the spring air fill her lungs. I'm ready now. Ready to celebrate not only our union, but my complete reconciliation with who I truly am. Suleiman took her hand and placed a respectful kiss on it. Then let's make this celebration memorable for everyone. The wedding day arrived with the splendor of a June sun, bathing the Berkshires in golden light. Contrary to tradition that would have kept the ceremonies of the elite as private affairs, Suleiman had made an unprecedented decision to open the castle doors to all people, Arabs and Americans alike. Thousands of people flowed in, filling the gardens and courtyards adorned with Moroccan lanterns that shone like earthly stars even in broad daylight. The air was laden with the scent of incense and orange blossoms, the music fusing the melancholic notes of the oud with the joyful melodies of American guitars. In her apartments, Evelyn prepared with the help of Yasmin and a circle of women representing both cultures. Her dress, a unique creation, blended Arab silk with embroidery and American lace. Her hair was partially covered by a diaphanous veil constellated with tiny pearls that caught the light with her every movement. Your mother would be so proud, murmured Yasmin, adjusting the veil, and your father too. Evelyn smiled, touching the medallion that now rested on her chest, containing not only her mother's photo, but also that of Karim Al-Fassi, symbolically reuniting those whom life had separated. They are with me today, she replied softly, in every beat of my heart. When she descended the marble steps leading to the gardens, a collective exclamation rose from the assembled crowd. She appeared not as the rejected and supposedly ugly girl who had been sent as a mockery 10 months earlier, but as the future Lady Al-Riyad, who had won not only the heart of America's most powerful Arab magnate, but also the respect and admiration of all. Suleiman awaited her beneath a canopy of white roses and jasmine, dressed in an elegant outfit that united Western costume and traditional Arab details. When their gazes met across the aisle separating the crowd, the world around them seemed to fade away. The ceremony itself was a living poem of cultural union, vows pronounced in English and Arabic, ancient rituals reinterpreted to celebrate equality and mutual respect, readings of Sufi poetry and American literature. With this ring, symbol of eternity without beginning or end, declared Suleiman, sliding a gold ring inlaid with sapphires onto her finger, I commit not only as a husband, but as a partner on life's path, respecting who you are, who you have been, and who you will become. Evelyn, her heart overflowing with emotion, responded by offering him a similar ring. With this perfect circle, I accept you entirely. your heritage, your dreams, your fears, and your hopes. I commit to building with you a future that honors our pasts while creating something entirely new. When they were declared husband and wife, applause and traditional yu-yus merged into an explosion of joy that seemed to want to reach the sky. The celebration that followed lasted until dawn. Sumptuous feast mixing Mediterranean and Middle Eastern cuisines, dances where Berber rhythms mingled with American melodies, animated conversations between people who, in normal times, would never have met. In the midst of this joyful cacophony, Suleiman gently led Evelyn to a quiet corner of the garden where a fountain sang softly under the stars. "I have a gift for you," he said, producing a sealed parchment scroll. Intrigued, she broke the seal and unrolled the document. It was an official deed establishing the Reed Al-Fassi Foundation, endowed with a substantial fund to perpetuate and extend the project she had initiated. The school, the medicinal gardens, the system of aid to those most in need. "So that your work will continue independently of our name or our fortune," explained Suleiman. "A legacy that belongs entirely to you." Moved beyond words, Evelyn could only press the document against her heart before nestling in the arms of the man who was now her husband. "The most beautiful gift you've given me," she murmured, "is having seen me, truly seen me, when everyone else only looked at my scar." He tenderly traced the mark on her eyebrow, then his own, identical. "Perhaps these scars weren't flaws, but signs destining us for each other." She laughed softly, the sound blending with the murmur of the fountain. "Who would have believed that what we considered a punishment would become our greatest blessing?" Under this infinite sky of New England that had seen her arrive as a prisoner of cruel expectations, with the scent of amber and Persian roses in the air, Evelyn realized that the greatest reversal of all was simple and profound. What the world called a curse had always been her greatest strength, for it had freed her to become exactly who she was born to be. And now, hand in hand with the man who loved her not despite, but with all her complexities and dualities, she was finally complete. Not as the rejected daughter of the Blackwoods, nor even as the rediscovered heir of the Alfasis, but as Evelyn Reed Al-Fassi Al-Riyad, a woman who had built bridges where others had seen only abysses.